Hello, this is a quick introduction to Module 1. In Module 1, we're going to go over the foundations of deviance, what deviance is and isn't. In sociology, we look at deviance as just the breaking of a social norm. It doesn't matter what degree the norm is. Walking down the wrong side of the road is going to be just as deviant or has the same definition of deviance as being a serial killer. It's you broke a social norm. Now, we do understand that there are differences, and that's kind of where we get into the work in this module. We're going to be looking at how our society defines deviance, and then understand that other societies are going to define it in a completely different way. So you will do some cross-cultural studies. There's a little more reading in this module than some of the others. We're going to get pretty video heavy as we go on. But in this one, we're really looking at where does the concept of deviance come from? How do we define deviance? How have we defined deviance in the past? And if we're looking at how did we define deviance in the past, it's kind of the struggle that we had as a discipline to answer the question. Because if we know, especially if we know who is going to be, like if you put deviance and criminal together, which we don't in sociology, obviously, but in the beginnings of the study of deviance, we kind of use deviance and criminal kind of together. And what we were interested in as a field was trying to figure out, so who are the criminals? So if you could figure out who the criminals were, let's say maybe age 8, 9, 10, you could either intervene or, you could do something. And if you took all the criminals away, then wouldn't society be better? We'd all live happily ever after and all that good stuff. But of course, it's not that easy, right? So we will look at those foundations, we will look at the definitions, and we will do some cross-cultural research. And by the end of the module, we should all have a pretty good understanding of how we view deviance and where it fits into some of the larger parts of sociology and criminal justice. Module 3 is going to be content-based, more focusing on crime and substance abuse. So instead of looking at general theories of deviance, you're going to be concentrating on those specific typologies of deviance. You'll be looking at things like theoretical perspectives and understanding crime, and especially the social construction issue, the idea that what is a drug is decided upon by the culture. I'm a big Diet Coke person. It really is Diet Coke. You can see it right there. But anyway, I drink Diet Coke. Caffeine is an approved drug, right? I can go anywhere I want to and pick this up. But cocaine cannot, right? That is an illegal substance. So our society decides what are legal and illegal substances and how we spread that out and then look at the ramifications of the usage of those things. So that social construction is going to be really important, as well as more institution level things such as the war on drugs. What was the war on drugs? What are the impact of the war on drugs through society? We'll look at some race and class disparities and just basically everything that has to do with crime and substance abuse. Module 4 is going to deal with sexuality and mental illness. The main focus for this module is going to be the idea of, is deviant something you do, or is deviant something you are? So in society, we kind of look at both of those things. Sometimes we look at the individual, the deviance that you are partaking in, the norms that you are breaking, are such that the society has decided that you yourself bodily are a deviant person. There are other things in society that we kind of separate from the body and say, well, you're a good person, but you do this thing. Like if I were to speed down the interstate someday, I'm not, a terrible, awful human. Depends on how fast I'm going, right? If I'm going like 75, I did something deviant. That society is going to say you did something deviant. Um, if I were to, obviously never do these things, but if I were to be a serial killer or something like that, that would be a deviant. Society would say, okay, you bodily do not need to be here. There's something wrong with your brain. There's something wrong with all of you. You're doing deviant acts, and you're doing these deviant acts because it's a reflection of you as an individual. So the being a deviant person versus doing deviant things really separates itself out in the discussion of mental illness and sexuality, because we tend to put a lot of the mental illness and sexuality deviances into the category of being a deviant person in our culture. And we don't often look at the social construction, becoming deviance aspect of it, the idea that all deviance is socially constructed, sexuality is socially constructed, everything is socially constructed. So we are going to be looking at that difference. And then we're also going to put the medical profession in, because depending on the sexual deviance we're looking at, the medical profession may be involved. Somebody who is transgender may be interfacing with the medical profession in order to access hormones or even surgery. Somebody with mental illness may be interacting with the health industry in order to obtain medications. So we're going to be looking at the medical models, sociological models, and then what we call medicalization. We turn things that we used to say were problem behaviors into medical things that become problems of the person. So that's kind of what we're looking at this semester, or this term, this module. And your assignment is going to include a destigmatization exercise. So some of those deviances that we consider to be of the individual, being a deviant person, we then stigmatize that person. So we want to pull the stigma away, and in doing that, we basically pull the deviance out of the individual and put it back outside again.